Hello and welcome to your quarterfinal match for the StarCityGames.com Baltimore Open, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. Chris Andersen on Bant Company versus Cory Dissinger on Green Blue Crush. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Cory is going to be on the play as he was first seed in our Swiss. He's going to lead off with a Lumbering Falls and just pass the turn back to Chris, who does have a Canopy Vista. Cory's going to play an island and a copy of Noose Constrictor, which will do a very good job at protecting his life total as he gets to that critical mass of lands that he needs to play all of his spells.
Yeah, and Noose Constrictor is a great defensive card. It does a lot of good work blocking. But what's so great about playing a card like Noose Constrictor as opposed to a card like Smother that also fills a similar role is Noose Constrictor can just attack, and you can play it proactively.
All right, Cory is going to attack for 2 with his Noose Constrictor and just play another one. Chris does have a Tireless Tracker on his 3rd turn to go along with his 3 lands, and just going to pass the turn back to Cory.
And this is a role that we've rarely seen Cory in, but he's kind of the beatdown right now. And this is got to be throwing Chris for a little bit of a loop. Chris really would have liked to have had a 2-drop or at least be on the play, but right now it seems like he's behind on the initiative.
All right, Cory is going to attack for 2 with that Noose Constrictor. Chris is not going to block. He's going to take 2 damage and fall down to 16. Cory's going to cast a Nissa's Pilgrimage in his 2nd main phase, get 2 forests, put 1 onto the battlefield, 1 in his hand, and then just play that forest for his land for the turn.
And Cory is, accelerating himself into the mid game with a Nissa's Pilgrimage, developing more and more mana, and Chris has got to do something pretty big to, try to catch up and then surpass him on tempo if he's going to have any hope of winning this game.
Chris is going to play a Yavimaya Coast and get a clue token. Sorry, Chris, your personal clue tokens are nice, but we do have those nice, shiny Max McVady clue tokens we like to show off. And he's just going to cast a main phase Collected Company.
And I think the reason he's casting at main phase here is just so to hope he can hit a Reflector Mage. If he hits a Reflector Mage, bounces the untapped Noose Constrictor, Chris can finally start attacking for some damage.
It's also relevant because there is a copy of Clash of Wills in Cory's deck.
Yeah, the one of. Yeah, Cory's
the
deck.
Fun of.
Yeah, by now you guys soon you guys will be able to see Cory's deck list, and it is a true spectacle of one-ofs.
All right, Chris Andersen is going to find a Sylvan Advocate and a Thalia Heretic Cathar with that Collected Company.
And it's not really worth it for Chris to attack because Cory could just discard 2 random cards, make his Noose Constrictor 4/4 and block. So I like the no attack here on Chris, even though it does bode poorly for his overall game plan of wanting to be the beatdown.
He will pass the turn back to Cory Dissinger, who's going to draw for the turn. Let's see what kind of action we have. We've got a Blighted Woodlands, which will enter the battlefield tapped because of Thalia, and just a pass of the turn.
And Blighted Woodland is just a great way for Cory to continually ramp his way up without having to devote too many spells slots to ramp cards.
All right, we just got an update. Osip is going to take a very quick game 1.
Wow, that was
over
real
Zachary
fast.
Canner.
We're like 4 minutes into this, and Osip already won? That's crazy.
All right, Chris is going to play a Prairie Stream. It will enter tapped as he doesn't have the basic land requisites. Get another clue for his Tireless Tracker. It looks like he's thinking about an attack with the Thalia. And maybe the Tireless Tracker.
I feel like if you're going to attack with anything, you might as well just attack with everything.
Looks like it's just going to be the Thalia. He's trying to razzle-dazzle his opponent.
Well, I think the reasoning behind this is because Chris can put a +1/+1 counter on the Thalia and then have the Sylvan Advocate fight something else. And if that's the case, then Cory's going to have to do some pretty big discarding in order to keep both of his creatures alive. So Chris has got to force some sort of trades here.
All right, well, both Noose Constrictors are going to jump in front of the Thalia.
And I think if I were Chris, I would... So it doesn't look like we've gone to combat damage yet.
All right, he's going to put a counter on the Tireless Tracker and have it fight one of the Noose Constrictors.
So now Cory's going to have to discard quite a few cards if he wants this to work out. And what's also going to be interesting about this is if the creatures have damage on them, Chris is going to be able to do first strike damage, potentially finish some of them off that have damage on them from the fight before they do damage back onto the Thalia.
All right, well, Cory's going to discard a copy of Emrakul to the Noose Constrictor. And then Chris is going to sacrifice a clue to put another counter on the Tireless Tracker. Cory will discard another land, so he's going to make his Noose Constrictor a 4/4. Dramoka's command will resolve. They will fight off, and the Tireless Tracker is going to die. Now Cory has to decide what he wants to do before first strike damage here.
And Cory's discarding a lot of cards. He's discarded, well, he's discarded 2 cards and lost a Noose Constrictor to essentially, well, and 2 Noose Constrictors to trade with a Dramoka's command and a Tireless Tracker. So that was definitely a good trade for Chris. He can clear up some of the board. He got some of the cards out of Cory's hands, and we'll see what he can do from here.
Well, on Chris's end step, Cory is going to cast a Pulse of Murasa, go up to 26, and get back that Noose Constrictor. It will enter the battlefield tapped, though, because of the Thalia.
Yeah, Cory's got 26 life, though, so he's relatively safe right now. What he wants to do is set up a little bit of a defense and then get some sort of card advantage online. He doesn't really want to deploy a card like Kiora right now, even if he has access to one. He would prefer to deploy it when he has a way to defend it, or at least try to defend it.
Well, Noose Constrictor is going to come down tapped, and Chris is going to send both his Tireless Track, or his Sylvan Advocate and his Thalia into combat. That Sylvan Advocate is up to a 4/5 now. That's going to drop Cory down to 19.
And I think some of Chris's best threats in the matchup are the Flash Flyers. Specifically, Andersen, I think, is one of the best ways for Bant Company to attack the green-blue Crush deck, because at some point, Cory's going to start looping Crush of Tentacles and bouncing Chris's board, and he's never going to be able to get through on the ground because there's going to be this big octopus token in the way. If Chris has a Reflector Mage, he can repeatedly replay the Reflector Mage to bounce the octopus token, but I think as we're getting closer to the stage where Cory can do that, Chris is going to want to just pass the turn with 5 mana up for an Andersen or 4 mana up for a Collected Company so that he can mount an attack as soon as he untaps after that crush happens.
All right, well, here we have a Traverse the Ulvenwald from Cory. It is on the stack. Chris might respond with a Collected Company to try and find a Spell Queller.
Yeah, this would be a nice thing to do. Probably one of the more threatening things that Cory could get is Ishkana. That would be a great way for Cory to clog up the board. And this is a phenomenal hit for Chris.
Wow, so he's going to hit a Spell Queller to counter the Traverse. The Reflector Mage is going to bounce the Noose Constrictor. Cory just has another Blighted Woodland, and this Thalia is being very good against this Crush deck.
Yeah, a Crush of Tentacles would have been great there if Cory had it. He would have been able to bounce Chris's board and get his Traverse the Ulvenwald back and just cast it. But as it is, Chris is going to be able to attack for a boatload of damage here.
All right, so Chris is going to cast a Tireless Tracker, play a land, get a clue, and send all of his creatures into the red zone. Cory's going to activate Lumbering Falls to block. So we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 damage coming. So he's going to block the Reflector Mage, which will die. He's still going to take 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and fall down to 8.
And Chris has successfully mounted a pretty serious offense, and Cory really needs some way of catching up like Crush of Tentacles.
Looks like we did draw another copy of Traverse the Ulvenwald.
And an Ishkana here would be quite nice.
They do all enter the battlefield tapped, though.
Oh, that's right. So I wonder what Cory can even do here. He might be able to get a Den Protector to...
A Den Protector would allow him to get back a Pulse of Murasa,
yeah,
and then cast the Pulse on an Emrakul.
Yep. But it looks like Chris is able to attack for, let's see, 2, 6...
He's likely dead from 14.
7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think he's going to be dead from 14. So I'm not sure what Cory could have here. He really needed a Crush of Tentacles. This Thalia has done a lot of work. I think basically this is his one out, to play the Elvish Visionary and just hope he draws Crush.
Well, We saw earlier where he was able to +1 his Nissa and find his way to a victory. So Elvish Visionary, he's going to cast it. It will enter the battlefield tapped. And we did not find a Crush of Tentacles.
Oh, man.
And Cory Dissinger is going to scoop it up. He's going to lose game 1 against Chris Andersen, Green Blue Crush versus Bant Company. Let's go ahead and take a look at the player sideboards so we can see just what we think each player is going to do. Cory has 1 World Breaker, 1 Ishkana Graph Widow, 1 Summary Dismissal, 4 Death Misraptor, a Void Chat, a Clash of Wills, 2 Negate, 2 Aerial Volley, and 2 Gnarlwood Dryad. How do we think he's going to sideboard?
I like the Ishkana as a way to just gum up the board, and I think Aerial Volley can be a good way to fight the Spell Quellers. He has a lot of other good cards, but I don't think he wants to water down the engine of his deck too much. So I think it's just going to be those 3 cards.
Now on Chris's side, we have 2 Declaration in Stone, a Tireless Tracker, 3 Lambholt Pacifist, 1 Nissa Vastwood Seer, 3 Tragic Arrogance, 2 Ojutai's Command, 2 Negate, and a Tameo Field Researcher. How do we think Chris is going to sideboard?
So basically what Chris wants to do is just cut off Cory's sources of card advantage. So I like the Negates and Ojutai's to do that. Cory has some Planeswalkers that he wants to resolve that are come in the form of creatures like Nissa and Jace. Those can get countered by Ojutai's Command, as can Dem Protector. And then I think Chris also probably wants access to Nissa Vastwood Seer and the Tireless Tracker. Those are going to be some cards that he's going to be able to get a lot of value and dig for the few copies of Disruption he has access to.
That makes quite a bit of sense. Well, while our players are finishing up shuffling here, let's take a quick second to learn a little bit more about what's coming up next weekend. StarCityGames.com Regional Championships. Stay tuned and check this out.
Don't miss the StarCityGames.com Regional Championships. On August 6th, play Standard at one of the many regional locations across the US and Canada. The first 200 players to register for each event will receive a Hot Pursuit playmat and token just for signing up. Regional Championships are part of the SCG Tour with SCG points for all players. Champions will earn an exclusive trophy, and all top 8 competitors will receive a playmat, pin, share of $5,000, and a spot in an upcoming SCG Invitational. Visit go.starcitygames.com/regionals to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Chris Van Meter here with Andrew Boswell, and we are getting ready to start Game 2 of our quarterfinal match between Cory Dissinger on Green Blue Crush and Chris Andersen on Bant Company. Chris Andersen was able to take the first game with an onslaught of creatures. Thalia Heretic Cathar was able to mess up Cory's development. He was not able to defend particularly well because his creatures were entering the battlefield tapped, and he missed on the very last turn trying to find a Crush of Tentacles, which he actually didn't see the entire game.
Yeah, basically in this matchup, the Bant Company deck really needs to try to push the aggression to kill this Crush deck before it gets its full engine online. And we've seen some Bant players play more controlling versions of the Bant Company deck. Chris kind of has a little bit more of an aggressive version with those Thalias. And the Thalias in particular were pivotal, not only making it so that the blockers came to play tapped and Cory took a lot more damage, but it also disrupted Cory's game plan because his Blighted Woodlands kept coming into play tapped. And getting a lot of mana is one of the powerful things that Cory can do. And Thalia was able to disrupt not only Cory's ability to defend, but essentially his ability to grow his mana. So Thalia did a lot of work that game. I think the big moment of it was when Chris hit that one Collected Company that hit Reflector Mage and Spell Queller, because on one turn that was essentially one spell that in effect gave him like a 4-spell lead in that moment, because the Spell Queller and Reflector Mage both essentially took out one of Cory's spells for the time being. But the Thalia was also an integral part of making it so that once Chris got ahead on tempo, Cory just didn't have enough time to catch up.
Well, it looks like Cory Dissinger is going to keep his starting 7, but Chris Andersen is going to send his back for a mulligan. So let's go ahead and see if he likes to see his 6. And if so, we're going to battle.
Yeah, and for the most part, Chris just wants to have a good start. The very early part of the game is where he's generally going to be favored, and he really needs to seize an initiative to start whittling away at Cory's life total before he starts looping Crush of Tentacles and having his big, powerful spells that can catch him up on the board and trump what Chris is doing.
Well, Chris does not look too happy with his hand, but he is going to go ahead and keep it. His scry is going to top
He's
or
just
bottom?
keeping a good poker face.
Going to keep it
You know, he's
right on
real
top.
stoic.
Cory will start off with an Evolving Wilds and go get an island out of his deck and pass the turn back to Chris. Chris has a Prairie Stream and going to pass back, and we have a couple updates for you. Osip Lebedovich has won his match.
My man.
Over Abzan Control, and Matt Tumovich and Zachary Plott are going to a Game 3, so the decider to see who moves on there to the semifinals in the Band Company Mare.
Don't ever doubt the green-white token player. Can't stop, won't stop winning.
All right, well, Cory's going to play a force and pass the turn back to Chris. See if he has a 2-drop here. There's a Yavimaya Coast, and he's just going to pass the turn.
So the silver lining of Chris not having a 2-drop is at least Cory didn't either. So far they're relatively even. Chris wants to come out ahead. He'd prefer to come out on turn 2, but he'll come out on turn 3 if it still means he gets to be ahead. That's the important thing.
All right, well, Cory does have a 4th land and a Noose Constrictor that Chris is going to snag with a
Wow, so that's a big
Spell
move.
Queller, and a Clash of Wills will counter it, and that Noose Constrictor is going to be around to rear its ugly head.
And now Cory is ahead on the board. This Noose Constrictor, it played some pretty good defense in the previous game. It's not perfect, but for a 2-mana spell, you really can't ask for too much more.
Well, Chris Andersen is just going to slam a Collected Company in his main phase. He's going to hit 5 misses and a Tireless Tracker and pass the turn back to Cory. So that has to be good news for Cory Dissinger, that Collected Company basically whiffed.
Yeah, Collected Company, it's a pretty high variance card. We saw last game it be amazingly powerful when it hit that Spell Queller and Reflector Mage. This situation, though, only hitting Tireless Tracker is not particularly exciting.
Well, Kiora, Master of the Depths, is going to resolve, and -2, we're going to see Rogue's Passage, Blighted Woodland, Forest, and Pulse of Marasa get revealed. He's going to grab that Blighted Woodland and pass the turn back to Chris Andersen. This is going to be a pretty good turn for Chris. Looks like he has a Reflector Mage in hand, so he can bounce that Noose Constrictor and kill the Kiora.
Yeah, and have mana open to crack a clue or cast the Dromoka's command that he has access to also. And killing Kiora is just what the doctor ordered. One of the primary goals of Chris, not only does he need to pressure Cory's life total, but he also needs to attack the Planeswalkers and prevent Cory from really getting his engine online. This is something that I try to do with aggro decks a lot, is I try to attack people's card advantage. Because if they don't have access to their card advantage, a lot of times their deck falls apart because they either don't see their big spells or they don't have enough mana for their big spells. They really need a lot of card advantage in order to have the powerful late game that they're seeking.
All right, well, we do have that Blighted Woodland for Cory, and he's just going to play a Den Protector face down. Chris Andersen will crack that clue on Cory's end step. He's going to get a +1/+1 counter on that Tireless Tracker, and now we go into Chris Andersen's turn. Looks like he does have another Reflector Mage and an Abyssin. Quite a few options this turn. He just wants to try and push through as much damage as possible.
Yeah, the fact that he has an Abyssin and a Reflector Mage is really important. That those are the 2 cards that can kind of insulate him against Crush of Tentacles being looped, because the Reflector Mage can just essentially kill the 8/8 Octopus token that gets played, and Abyssin means that he can always have pressure.
All right, well, Dromoka's command is going to put a counter on the Reflector Mage, and it's going to fight the Den Protector. Cory will turn it face up, so he's going to get to return a card from his graveyard to his hand. Let's see what he wants.
And this is pretty nice. Chris is going to be able to attack for 7, and he still has 3 mana, so he has, can potentially cast a Spell Queller, crack his clue. I don't believe he has another Dromoka's command, but if he can just get into the next turn and have mana for Abyssin, he's going to feel like he's in great shape.
So here, Cory still deciding what he wants to return with that Den Protector. I do spy a copy of Crush of Tentacles in his hand, so he is well on track to starting that loop going. Looks like we're just going to get back a Kiora. Chris is going to sacrifice his Evolving Wilds, get another clue from that Tireless Tracker once he grabs a basic land out of his deck. He's just going to get a forest.
And Chris is doing that now because he wants to get the land out of his deck before he cracks the clue. It's a pretty marginal change to the probability of what he's going to draw, but it's free, so you might as well do it.
It's a non-zero amount.
Yep.
And it's not like he's going to crack that Evolving Wilds in response to something else.
Right.
All right, well, he is not going to crack the clue and leave up mana for a Spell Queller. He's just going to attack, get in 7 points of damage, knocking Cory down to 13 and passing the turn. We're getting into 6 mana range here, which means Crush of Tentacles can be surged.
Yeah, if Cory doesn't cast Crush of Tentacles here, Chris is likely to just cast the Spell Queller end of turn, and then make an attack for quite a bit of damage, and then just have that Avacyn to replay with all of his mana open in case Cory crushes on the following turn. And that is likely going to be a winning line.
Cory has a forest. Looks like he's just going to 6 mana Crush to bounce everything back.
Yeah, and this is going to cause him to take 1 point of damage, I believe, from the Yavimaya Coast. And Crush of Tentacles does have non-land permanents, so Chris will lose those clues. He does have enough cards to replay, though, so I don't think it's too troublesome.
All right, so Chris is going to draw for the turn. Oh, and there's the
just
negate.
drew the negate. Wow.
He's going to replay Tireless Tracker, play a land, get a clue.
And this is a pretty nice spot because he can crack the clue, make his Tireless Tracker a 4-power creature, and still have mana for the negate. Can potentially knock Cory down to 8, and that's only 2 hits from an Avacyn. Ooh, it looks like Cory's got his Emrakul.
He does have an Emrakul in hand.
Looks like he's also got a Pulse of Marasa, so we're probably getting into the territory where the game is going to start to turn a little bit and get a little bit more complicated. Cory has a lot of good options, and we're going to start seeing this Simic Crush deck really start to flex its muscles at this point.
So it looks like we know that Cory has a sorcery, a land, a planeswalker, and an instant in his graveyard, at least.
Yeah, so Emrakul will be reduced.
At least 9.
Yeah, reduced by 4 mana.
A creature can further that down into 8. All right, so he's going to reveal 4. There's a World Breaker, a Crush of Tentacles, a Forest, and either a Jace or a Nissa. I can't quite tell from the checklist card.
And I'm not... so he did bring in the World Breaker. That's actually interesting to note. That was something that I had thought he would bring in a lot of matchups. I never got to see it because it's just a one-of, but it does seem like he did bring it in.
All right, so he's going to take the World Breaker and a land. He's going to cast a Noose Constrictor and pass the turn back to Chris Andersen. He will pop that clue on his end step.
And Chris had 2 mana that he didn't use there. I'm not sure how beneficial it would have been to counter that Kiora, but now he's faced with a situation where he has to decide if he wants to counter the Kiora or not, and if he doesn't, it's going to be a continual source of card advantage.
All right, well, Reflector Mage is going to bounce the Noose Constrictor, and Chris is going to decide where he's going to send that Tireless Tracker.
I almost would have preferred for Chris to counter that Kiora. There's certainly a good argument not to, because now he has it for a Crush of Tentacles. But the argument for countering it would mean that Chris would be able to attack Cory down to 8 here and still have 5 mana open for an Avacyn to be able to come down if a Crush of Tentacles was cast.
Looks like he is just going to attack Cory for 4 and bring him down to 8. He's going to keep Kiora around. And that may lead to an Emrakul next turn.
It could. We'll see. And he's playing the Duskwatch Recruiter, so he's saying, if you're going to Crush of Tentacles, I've got the negate. I don't need Avacyn this turn. And this presents a lethal clock that Cory has to respond to. So if Cory tries to stabilize with just a creature and a Crush of Tentacles, Chris Andersen is going to be able to counter the Crush and then Reflector Mage the one blocker. So Cory's got to you know,
So
navigate this perfectly.
So it looks like the Planeswalker actually had came back into his hands, the Kiora. So if he were to minus the Kiora to let it die, then we would be at that 5 count, which would reduce Emrakul down to 8 mana that Cory can cast this turn. So he's going to minus the Kiora. Looks like he gets a Void Grafter and a Yavimaya Coast. And he has 8 mana here, so he can cast Emrakul if he wants.
Yeah, and this is a big game.
Looks like that's what we're going to get. Chris is going to verify the contents of the graveyard. But there's Planeswalker, instant, land, sorcery, and creature.
And you cannot negate this. You can, what's the summary dismissal? That's the one good answer you can have against Emrakul, but Chris does not have that in his deck.
All right, well, on Cory's end step, Chris is going to activate Duskwatch Recruiter and get another Tireless Tracker. And now we get to see how
Cory gets to play Chris's turn.
How Cory gets to play Chris's turn. Well, there is a Canopy Vista. Now, is Reflector Mage able to target your own creatures, or is it only opponents?
No, I don't think so. I think it's only opponents. So probably what Cory wants to do is just run one of Chris's creatures into the Emrakul, probably the Tireless Tracker. That's likely going to be the most valuable one. And then I don't think Cory wants Chris to cast anything. And so Cory can, look at this and realize that he's going to essentially have his Emrakul get Reflector Maged, and that there's going to be a attack on Cory for 4, reducing him down to 4. And he's probably just looking at this hand and just thinking about how he wants to plan out the subsequent turns. Because he needs to develop a plan. He's, quite frankly, has a lot to slog through.
Well, the Tireless Tracker is going to attack into the Emrakul.
Take some pain. The Yavimaya Coast.
Going to deal 2 damage with the Yavimaya Coast.
Every point of damage counts.
Is Reflector Mage a May? If that's the case, then he can just play the Reflector Mage and choose to not bounce anything. It is not a May.
Yeah. And it does specify opponent.
So not a May and opponent. Maybe they had this situation in mind when they designed the cards.
You know what would be really good here? Sirach, the Hunt Caller. That would be game, folks.
All right, well, Chris is going to get his turn of reprieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's going to... Yeah, there's my man. Me and Sirach, we've done a lot of work together. He's the one who spots me at the Tarma gym.
All right, well, here's the Tireless Tracker. It is going to be discounted, but it seems that Chris is going to pay full mana for it. Got another clue.
So here, Chris's best move is probably just bounce this Emrakul, knock Cory down to 4, and I would really like to see a 5th land here.
All right, so we're going to crack a clue with the mana that was floating. 5 attack is going to come across and knock Cory down to 3.
So Chris still has this negate for a crush, so he's able to deploy more threats to the board without having to worry about it.
All right, Werewolf is supposed to transform back.
And Cory basically needs to cast 2 Crush of Tentacles this turn. He also, I think, has a Pulse of Marasa, which is going to help buy some time as well. He could really use a card like Ishkana. Ishkana would be great in this situation.
Ishkana would have been great.
Yeah. He does have 1 in his main and 1 in his sideboard, so it's certainly something that he gives the nod as being one of his better ways to stabilize.
Now, another possibility is that he could have actually cast the Reflector Mage from Chris's hand and bounced his own Emrakul, because it states until your next turn. So since Chris gets another turn after that, I believe Cory would then be able to play Emrakul on this turn that he gets after Chris takes the extra turn to start it all over again.
Well, I'm not sure if that would actually get him anywhere, because then there'd be another Reflector Mage that can attack, so Cory would probably be at 1 at this point.
He would be at 1, but he would be able to play the Emrakul and get another crack at getting that negate out of Chris's hand if he can draw into an instant or sorcery, and then try and find a surge after that.
Yeah, if he doesn't, if he's not able to use Chris's hand to essentially wipe Chris's board, though, he's probably just dead on the next attack, because Chris would get a turn before he does. But I don't know. We can go back and, you know, go through the YouTube video, the YouTube channel, and rewatch these videos to figure out what the alternate lines of play are.
Well, Cory is just going to play a Noose Constrictor and pass. Chris does have an island and is going to draw a card with a clue. And here we just have everything is coming in. Pulse of Marasa is going to be cast.
And this is a great negate target at this point.
All right, well, the Pulse is going to be countered. We have Void Grafter.
And I don't think that this does anything, unfortunately.
It is not going to stop anything, and Chris Andersen is going to beat the seemingly unbeatable
Batman has fallen.
Blue-Green Crush deck and take this match 2-0, and he's going to move on to our quarterfinals.
Man, I have to say, I was really rooting for Cory. He's done so well this whole tournament. He's been the talk of the town. The entire narrative of his deck is just great. You know,
it's awesome.
He worked so hard for all through last season to try to tune this deck. Didn't exactly have the cards that he needed, simply because they hadn't been printed yet. He got Emrakul from the new set. It's been great for him. He's done so well time and time again, as we've seen him on camera this weekend. And even though he falls a little short here, you know, we just have to congratulate him. Just great story, great effort. Always nice to see hard work pay off.